Hello, I'm Fenland Fisherman and welcome to another fishing video.
Well, hello and welcome to another video, today in association with Coarse Angling Today magazines, and welcome to the first video in a new series. This series is going to see me out fishing some of Britain's best anglers in search of specimen sized fish. Today I'm joined by predator expert and well-known specimen hunter Mark Barrett. We've come here on the banks of one of my local fenland rivers in search of a 5-pound chub. Now, although a 5-pound chub may not sound like a very big fish, trust me, if we can get a 5 out of here, we'll be doing well. So we've got a target for the video. Now let's just see if we can catch one. I'm going to be fishing here until the evening, so I'm feeling pretty hopeful. Right, let's see if we can catch a few fish. Well, as I've already said, I've come down here onto a stretch from my local fenland river in search of chub. Just come down here for the day, joined by Mr. Mark Barrett, and our target for the session is a 5-pounder. Now, that is entirely possible on this stretch, but there aren't many of them in here. A 5-pounder for this stretch and for this river, in fact, is a very big fish, so let's just hope we can catch one. Now, tactics-wise, same stuff as usual. If you're familiar with the video I put on last year, chub fishing, which in fact was on this stretch, you'll know what sort of tactic I'm using. I'm just sticking to the steak and mince approach. Here's some of the mince I've been putting in the feeder. And it's a really simple approach, as you'll know if you've watched the video, and devastating as well. So, like I said, very simple and a very cheap approach as well. Now there are chub in here, and there's quite a few small chub, but the large chub, well, we're not so sure. I had a 5.3 out of here last year, so that's why we're here today. But that took many sessions to catch that fish, and you know, that came right on the last session of the season down here. So I don't think it's going to be easy, but hopefully, even if we don't catch a 5, we'll have a few smaller ones along the way. But yeah, so it's a nice spot, lovely weather, probably one of the warmest days it's been for ages. We've had that recent cold spell, and because of exams and because of that poor weather, I haven't really been able to get out. This is one of my first sessions of the year. So rods are out, and we're both fishing today on the same bait and approach. Let's see if we can catch one, eh?
Well, this just goes to show that you don't just get big chub on it. I shouldn't think this fella's much over the pound mark, but he took a nice bit of steak. In fact, it's just as well they've got bloody great big gobs, because he'd have never got that lump of steak in there otherwise. But second fish I've hooked since we've moved to this swing. I've obviously landed on them because George ain't caught anything yet.
Well, I'm into a fish, really going as well. Give a right wrap round on the tip. It's hanging down there now. Definitely a chub, I think. Just doddy now. Went off a really long run while I was setting up the camera, and now he's just plodding about. Coming in now though. Haven't seen him yet. Don't think it's R5 though. It'd be funny, wouldn't it? First fish of the day. Target done, but I don't think he's a bad one, but I've no way of telling at the moment. I've got a barber's hook on, so I've got to be quite careful. Still haven't seen him. He's not a bad one, but he's not a 5. Oh, I don't know actually, he's a good fish. That's a very good fish. Oh, first fish of this spot, and what a cracker. 5.14, that's our target for the video done. First fish, yeah. So chuffed with this, absolutely cracker. Brand new PB. Look at the girth across that fish. Pretty much fin perf that, isn't it? Nice chunk of steak on a running feeder rig. Just a little bit of mince in the feeder, and literally the rod just wrapped round and it tore off. What a lovely fish. Right, let's have a look at the rig. Really simple, like all my chub fishing. And all my fishing actually, I like to try and keep it simple. All I've got, 5-pound main line straight through and a running feeder. It's a little cage feeder there. See how many ounces it is? 14 grams, really small one. Because the river isn't really pushing through, I don't really need a heavy feeder to hold bottom. So I'll tend to go for a lighter weight as I can get away with. And got a small BB shot just to stop the feeder. I wouldn't normally use my my stops rather than shots to stop running leads and feeders. But for some reason, when the fish are biting, the stops have been sliding right down to the hook. So I don't know if it's because the fish are really wanting the bait today and taking it hard, or whether that's just because I was using a poor quality stop. But either way, I've taken that off now and I've put a shot, and that seems to be doing the business. I then have around about between the shot and the hook about a foot of line, so it's effectively a foot hook link, although I'm only using the mono, and a size 8 hook. It's a strong size 8 is what I'm using. And I'm just taking a little bit of steak, if I can get a bit here for you, because although last year, if you're familiar with the video, I came down to the same spot chub fishing, and the bits of the steak I was using were a lot larger. But this year I've just gone for a tiny little bit of steak, so I'm going to show you it. Just there. I'm just nicking that on the size 8 hook. And that's what the chub took. It's a very small bit of steak. Tiny little bit. That's because with this sun, I'm sure the fish are going to be quite finicky and not really going to be wanting huge chunks. And also, that then mimics the mince that I'm putting in the feeder. So if that's sitting amongst some mince, it looks like another bit of minced beef, so they're going to have it, and clearly it works. So that's the rig I'm using. Like I said, very simple and very easy to make up. Anyway, let's just cast this back out. As you can see, the tackle I'm using today is just very simple. Got a light collapsible chair here, and my rucksack really, as well as the net and the rod obviously. Let's just have a look at the rod and the reel. Now the rod is pretty crucial in my mind. When chub fishing, especially for the bigger fish, you don't want to be using too light a gear. So I've got here a pretty meaty feeder rod. In this case it's just a grey specimen feeder rod. And then I've got a standard fixable reel here. Just per personal preference really, I like to use the front drag reels when I'm feeder fishing and the rear when float fishing, but either's fine really. And literally just got that loaded up with 5-pound mono. That's more than enough to cope with big fish, so that's fine. And really that is it. You've seen my rig. So very simple tackle and very simple tactics. And you know, that's more than enough to punch the feeder out to the other side of the river if I need be. But quite often I'm just fishing in the middle of the river and I don't need to be casting out miles. But if I had to, this rod would be able to do that. So that's the rod and the reel, really simple, and you know, as you've seen, it handled the fish perfectly. another fish. Definitely not as big as the last one, but it's another fish nonetheless. Just coming in close now. It's been quite a long time since the last one, but oh well, a fish is a fish. Here he comes. Small chub. There we are, small chub. About the sort of average size down there, probably about £1, £2. Right, I'll get him up and show him to the camera. But there we are, small chub. Probably only about, I'll say £2 at the most. That's more for standard stamper fish for here. And to be honest with you, it's just nice to get another one. Oh, a bit lively as you can see, but lovely fish, and still a very wide fish for its size. Right, let's slip it back.
Right, I'm going to just have a little quick talk through now with you about the gear that we're using, including rigs. George has gone through his free running rig. Well, I use a slightly different one, but we'll get to that in a minute. Starting off with any little fixed ball reel will do for chub, as long as it's got a nice good clutch, can hold 100 yards of £6 line, and let's face it, most of them should. They're fine. Don't need anything fancy. Personally, I prefer Shimano's in the little sizes. I don't think anybody makes better small reels, but that's personal preference and personal budget. Rod wise, we've got a feeder rod. Now, George has got, I know, a bigger one than me, but you know, he has to boast. His is 13 foot, this is 12 foot. Much lighter one probably than what George is using as well. It's only a 3/4 pound test curve. Great for small fish, small rivers, shy biting fish, you know, and bends to the butt on a decent chub, so which is what you want. Obviously a quiver tip to show us the bites. £6 mainline. Now, the major difference I do from George has his feeder free running up and down the line. Mine's tied off on a fixed paternoster loop, so that basically when I have it hanging down, the hook's in my hand, and that's how the feeder sits. It really doesn't matter between the two of them. Free running is good, paternoster's good. This is just the way I've always fished a cave feeder. It's how I was taught for growing up in the fens with ground bait, and we use the same. And of course, on the hook we're using a little bit of this. Now, you don't need to go mad and get your mum's best foot fillet steak or sirloin steak. Cheap bit of stewing steak like this, just hooked on. To a size 10, I've got a size 10 hook on. Sometimes I'll go up to a size 6 or 4 if I'm using big lumps. But today, we're only a couple of weeks after the snow melt's gone in, so the water temperature is still cold. Even though it's a lovely day outside, the water temperature's still cold, and they're preferring small slivers of bait rather than great big lumps. So just a little sliver like that on a size 10. And then in the cage feeder, again, there's no need to go expensive with this. In fact, personally, I think the Tesco's value cheap mince is better, because there's a higher fat content in it, so there's more flavour. And all you do is you just cut it up into little pieces like this, because it comes in big long strips where it's minced out. Cut it into little pieces and just gently ply it into the feeder. You don't want to push it in really hard, because it won't come out of the feeder, otherwise it will mould itself in. So just gently push it in, and just on the bottom give it a final little squeeze, and that'll sit there and hang then, and that's exactly the way you want it. Perfect presentation, and it's what's caught me 6 chub so far. Unfortunately, it hasn't caught me a £6 chub like George almost had, but the day is still young. So we're going to stick this one out where I've been getting a bite. and hopefully catch some more. Spot on. Right, well, it's getting towards dusk, and after a long period where my bites have dried up, I've finally got one of my best fish of the day. Well, my best fish so far of the day. Probably about 3.5 pounds. Not huge, but again, love the mince, love the steak. It's getting bigger, it's getting towards George's size. But a beautiful scale perfect cam chub. Can't beat them, so I'll slip him back and let's see what the dark brings.
Well, the light's going and the day's coming to an end. It's been a really slow day for me. I've had a few bites, but that £5 fish was the only one I had. But you know, who can really complain about that? PB fish and the target for the video all wrapped up and done. Mark's had a fair few, although you've only seen a couple of them. He's managed to have 6 fish so far, so he's done very well in terms of quantity of fish. And you know, you can't really beat that, can you? Come down for a good day's sport. That's the target for this video, the first video of the series done, and it's on to the next target now. I wonder what it could be. So don't forget to keep checking my YouTube page for the next video in the series, and who knows what we could be after. We could be after anything. Anyway, it brings the video nicely to a close, and unless I have a few fish later on in the evening, this will be the last scene. So from Mark and me, see you next time, and tight lines. Well, I'm into another one, another small one I think. No, it's a bit bigger than the last one. It's still not big. It's still not as big as my first one. Well, there we are, another fish and another 5.14. What a brilliant brace. What a lovely, lovely fish. Doesn't look as big as the last one, but a lot fatter, a lot more weight behind it. And again, really, really wide fish. I'll just put a go. Fantastic fish. Just as the light's going as well. Brilliant stuff. What a fantastic day. And what a brilliant end to it. Right. Let's slip her back. Well, it really is the end of the session now, and what a brilliant day. Those 2 £5 fish, both of which would have been my PBs. What was that? 5.15 and 5.14. Absolutely brilliant stuff. So again, from Mark and myself, we'll see you next time, and tight lines.